I hope we are live. So we are live. Give me a quick one in the chat. Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So I hope I am audible properly. Okay. So what we have discussing in the last session, we have discussed about context API, memoization hook, performance optimization hook, and what actually the fundamental of state management, right? We have been discussing this in the last session. And today, as I have promised it, today we are going to see about Redux and Just, right? We are going to study about Redux and Just and what actually Redux is, how they work, how to configure that, how to build an application using Redux, and we'll try to convert that same code using Just and as well. So before you jump onto Redux, let me give you one idea about context API again. So I'll just drop my screen. So once my screen is available to let me know. Yes, my screen is available. So in the last session, we discussed about one thing that was context API. And what do we understand by context API means कि whenever we are having a problem like a hierarchical problem from A, B, C, and D. Let's suppose this is a hierarchy of my component. Okay. A to B, B to C, C to D, and let's suppose till D. That means simple by saying hierarchy means कि B is lying inside A, C is lying inside B, and D is lying inside C. That means they are having this type of nature. Now, problem is कि D wants to utilize a value, let's suppose a name. Simple. D wants to utilize a value name. Or let's suppose the value I will be passing from, let's suppose A. Name is, let's suppose because. That means this is the value that I want to pass from A to D. What are the method that we can utilize? You will be saying, "Ki, what we can do prop drilling as well, right? One of the, you can say, basic fundamental method can be like this, do a prop drilling. And if you are well aware about context API, you will be saying, "Ki, we can do context API as well." Ki, what we can do, we can make a bridge between A and D directly without disturbing them, B and C, and I will be able to pass my data. And fair enough, this is pretty much a solid answer to your queries. Now, problem is key. It is also beneficial that your context API is a built-in method that comes with React, right? Just like a hook that we are having, it's a built-in method. So why we started to think like, why we started to get like we are not going to use context API more. We are going to have to switch from context API to any other library, or let's suppose any other outside package to do the state management. If you want to manage state properly, then we have to switch from local, that is your context API, inbuilt prop drilling, props passing. From that method, we have to switch to a library that is dedicated towards state management. And that's where your one of the core architecture of state management come into picture, that is known as Flux. And Flux is not something that should be you should be remembering as let's suppose state management architecture, but you need to understand that Flux is an inspiration to draw, and Flux can be the parent that have given us the inspiration or some methodology that we can think towards Redux. If how actually Redux can be operated on a React component and how it can solve a problem of global state management. So what actually Redux is? A Redux is a global state management library that is providing services to multiple entities or multiple frameworks to do the state management. And by default, React do have the state management tool, that is use context, create context, that you know as a context API. But whenever your structure get complex, whenever a state gets complex, when a hierarchy gets too much to handle, then you need to call a specialized entity that is very much efficient to handle these kind of situation. And it's just like unless you are you are capable to handle the mess that you are creating, you are most welcome to handle it on your own. But the moment you are not capable enough to handle that load, you have to call a specialized weapon, a specialized agent that is pretty much built for that task. So Redux is something that is built for that messy task and messy state management. And what it believes in only one, you can say, entity that you known as singleton architecture. Or you can also remember that by using a term called SST. And what do you mean by SST? SST means single source of truth. Simple. It is totally is a simple meaning that is called single source of truth. And what do you mean by single source of truth? Ki whenever I was telling you about props drilling, I have discussed one thing that was known as shared props or shared logic. That means if one or more component are willing to share the same data, we can have a shared logic. But the problem is if every component is going to be the author of their state, so it will be monotone. It cannot be a monotone. It will be a multiple point of failure. Each and every component is handling their own state. So whenever any of the bug, any of the entity that is fluctuating or that is very bad in that component, you will have to check multiple component to find the origin of that. But if you want to become a single point of failure, SPOF, that is a system design term that I'm quoting. Single point of failure means if I'm having an entity which is capable to handle each and every task, let's suppose one, two, three, each and every task that I am willing to operate, but by a only singleton architecture or by a single entity. That means only single entity is responsible for each and everything that is happening inside my React application. You will be thinking, yes, that sounds cool, but sometimes it is a overkill. Why it is overkill? Ki if you are having a single point of failure, that is a trade-off that you have to make. That whenever you are having a single point of failure, as you know, in monotonous architecture or monorepo architecture, it have a trade-off. It have some drawback when it comes to state management as well. But for that's what I said, ki whenever you are your application, whenever your let's suppose a project is in pivot level, as in a starting level, you don't have to worry about state management. You don't have to worry about a specific library that you are going to use. And my total focus from the day one that we started the series was कि जब भी तुम्हें कोई स्टेट मैनेजमेंट करने को बोले तो आपको यूज केस पूछना है कि सर हम किस यूज केस में इस पर्टिकुलर चीज को यूज कर रहे हैं. अब ऐसा नहीं है कि जहां पे मेरा काम प्रॉप ड्रिलिंग से हो सकता है वहां पे मैं रिडक्स सेटअप करने बैठ जाऊं, क्योंकि जब मैं अभी रिडक्स सेटअप करूंगा तुम्हारे सामने तो यू विल रियलाइज कि सर थोड़ा सा तो कॉम्प्लेक्स होता है रिडक्स इन टर्म्स ऑफ configuration or in comparison to let's suppose context API उतना ज्यादा हार्ड नहीं होता है जब आप इनिशियल लेवल पे काम कर रहे होते हैं. इसीलिए बोला जाता है कि कभी भी आपके एक एप्लीकेशन को जो कि स्टार्टिंग लेवल में है उसको कभी भी रिक्वायरमेंट नहीं होती है रिडक्स की या जस्ट स्टैंड की या रिकॉइल की या किसी भी एक्सटर्नल लाइब्रेरी की. आप सफिशिएंट और कैपेबल इनफ होते हैं अपने लोकली और बिल्ट इन मॉड्यूल से उसको हैंडल करने के लिए. तो ऐसा कहा जाता है कि जहां पे भी आपका एप्लीकेशन पिवट लेवल पे होता है, यू डोंट हैव टू यूज एनी ऑफ द एक्सटर्नल लाइब्रेरी. नाउ whenever you want to work with Redux, or the major term that you need to understand is single source of truth. Now, whenever the single source of truth was derived, it was derived from Flux architecture. Whenever you get time after the session, try to give it a thought or try to give it a read around single source of truth and the Flush architecture, they will be resonating you at the same level. They also believe in the same thing. Each and every React application should have the one owner. Let's suppose one state management owner. Everything should be deposited in that particular box. Everything should be taken from that box. So whenever your application is in trouble, whenever your application is not performing good, so you can, if efficiently, you will be able to debug that, because you know each and everything is coming from a single source, and that's why it is known as single source of truth. Of In single source of truth, as you know, whenever we are starting with backend, or when you go, it is a term called event. Everyone is comfortable with event. If you have gone through let's suppose event listeners bubbling capturing in JS DOM manipulation, you are much comfortable around event. So whenever you want to understand Redux, so Redux is simple. Why I'm saying simple, it's not simple library, but in simple term, if you want to understand Redux, Redux is not saying anything. React is saying, Redux is simply saying whenever you are maintaining a state of a component, whenever you are maintaining a state of an application, please try to maintain in a monotonous manner or a single way binding. That's simple. Data should be flowing a single way binding mode, not other way around. Let's take an example. If I'm having, let's suppose, a button, simple button, or in button I am having submit. This is a submit button. So you know there will be a submit handler that will be working. Let's suppose I'm defining a submit handler. This is a submit handler. And whenever you are defining this submit handler in React, what you actually do, you directly write this function and you write logic over here. Simple. You write every logic over here, and within that application, you are able to handle that logic. Let's suppose you are handling a set input e dot target dot value, whatever you want to do. Let's suppose you are doing this. But the problem is, whenever you are having a single component is fairly enough. You can do it. But whenever your application get bigger and bigger, then it will be a problem, right? Let's take on one more example for this. Let's suppose I'm having a button, and why I'm taking this example, because I will show you one flow of Redux. That's what I wanted to resonate with. Let's suppose I am having a, let's suppose, a button named deposit, and there is a button called deposit $10. Simple. I'm having a deposit $10 button. So what do you see? In whenever you are not having any Redux, whenever you are dealing with certain kind of operation, we defined a event that is handle submit, or let's suppose handle click. Let's suppose one event will be handle, event name will be handle click. One click, the moment user will click on this button, I will handle that click via a logic return. Let's suppose current balance is equal to available balance plus deposit amount. Simple. That's a simple formula that I want to write in this handle click. Yes or no? Whenever you want to deposit $10 in your account, so what you need to have a formula? Current balance is equal to available balance, or let's suppose plus deposit amount. Whatever the available balance currently, I will add the deposit amount into it. That will become a current balance of the user, and I can pass a state of that particular component, and I can show. Let's suppose zero balance was there, so now zero will be converted to $10. That means I will be able to show that the current balance is zero. Nice. But after that, problem is this. Whenever this particular component I am doing like this. So let's suppose I'm having one more button. So you will be having one more logic written over it. That means it become a logic heavy component. Component what never meant to be heavy. And for this kind of solution, we decided that we should have an entity, we should have certain thing that is totally built for this kind of behavior. I want to sort out this problem. So the problem is this complex structure and not a monotonous architecture to deal with this kind of logic. So what Redux has given us, Redux has given us one entity that is known as store. Simple. What Redux has given us? Redux has given us the store. It's a global state management library that believes in single source of truth, and your data flow should be single way bind. The data should be flowing single way, not other way around. Now, how actually Redux help you to do this thing? It says कि rather than handling Nix formula in the component itself, please do not handle this formula in that component. What you can do, you actually can write this formula somewhere else, right, beforehand, and rather than directly on the click of that button, rather than invoking this particular logic over here, you can transfer the data or the payload to the certain function that is residing somewhere else. So what it mean? What it mean? It simply means कि I don't want you to perform logic over here. I want you should be performing logic somewhere else. Let's suppose I am writing formula over here. Current balance is equal to available balance plus deposit amount. This is a simple formula that I'm writing. And whenever somebody will click over this button, rather than writing logic over here, I will use this handle click and I will dispatch this particular payload into this entity. Till this part, is it making sense? Yes or no? Whenever I want to do this, so what will happen actually? It will reduce a logic load over the component itself. Let me check comment. Yes. Okay. Now, if I say key by this particular formula, I will be able to reduce the logic over here. Now, how this particular box that I have created come into play? That's where your Redux start. Redux says key the box that I'm giving to you is known as store. Simple. And what actually store means? A store is a simple empty warehouse where you can perform operation. It's just an empty container where you can define your function. Listen carefully. Redux store is not a special thing. It's just an empty container which can contain your logic. So rather than writing logic over the component itself, I will be writing the same logic over here. And the logic that you are writing will be known as reducer or slice. Simple. The logic that you are writing will be known as reducer. The function that you are writing is known as reducer, or the part of that particular store will be known as slice, the piece of code that you are writing. And the function that you are writing that you need to define beforehand before you want to use it. Simple, it is common sense. Whenever you want to use function, you need to define that function earlier when you want to use it. Or this particular methodology is known as time travel debugging. What is known as? It is known as time travel debugging. Whenever we'll be requiring this function, it will be find out that this function is already been written by somebody else. In case this particular case, you. So you have already written this logic. Rather than in the component, you have written this over here in an empty container that is known as reducer. Now the problem is कि the moment I click on this button, I will make a certain payload, I will make a certain receipt of what you need to do, where you need to go. I will use this handle click, and rather than performing this formula over here, I will be sending this formula, I will sending this data to this formula. Please perform my logic, right? And after this part is done, how will I be able to show the current that is available balance? Because that means you need to update the state as well. That means you need to send the current balance to the screen as well. So that's where your subscription come into picture. If from that particular store, I can pass a subscription of the state that is known as a state. I will be able to pass the subscription of the state that is $10, and I will be sending this subscription to your UI. Now you tell me, what do you mean by subscription? Simple term. What do you mean by subscription? Subscription is something that is a read operation access. Simple. What is a subscription? It is a read operation access. That means user can read the data but cannot manipulate. And that's what props is all about. Now, can you connect that whatever subscription that we are passing is just a props from the store. You can read the props, you cannot change the props, right? If you know the props wala class on the session that we discussed, props cannot be changed. Props can only be read. Now, after this particular thing, now let me revisit this thing again. Whenever somebody is making any action, okay, I am making a receipt of this action. Okay, rather than performing logic in the component itself, I am transferring this load to somewhere else. And what we are using to transfer that load? We are using a dispatcher. And for dispatcher, we have a hook that is known as use dispatch. Simple. We have a hook named as use dispatch. And whenever you want to, you can want to show something. Let's suppose I am having a component that is having view balance, a button named as view balance. The moment I click over this, I want to show this particular state. But if there is a store, listen carefully. If this is a store can have multiple output. Store can have multiple desk or multiple result of the operation. If somebody is deducting the balance, somebody is depositing the amount, somebody is performing some other operation. That means your store can contain multiple reducer, right? And that's where your combined reducer come into picture. Okay, you can have multiple reducer in your store. So whenever you want to target a specific reducer, yeah, I want to target this task reducer, to do reducer, a counter reducer, or order reducer. If you want to target this, so I will be there. Suppose there is having three reducer in my you can say store. I want to select this. That's where to select this we use a hook called use selector. Okay, we'll be using a use selector hook that will allow us to select the particular store, particular value from that store. So let's suppose we are having a to do. Let's suppose we are having a to do. So my reducer name will be to do reducer. Let's suppose we are having to do slice. Okay. And what I'll be doing, I'll be targeting the state of the to do slice and I'll be picking the value from there. So your store can have multiple reducer, and for that we can have the thing called combined reducer. Now look at this particular method again. Look at this. Your action is starting from the front end part, right? And rather than performing all, because but before that, remember, before we introduce Redux, everything was happening in this area. Simple. This was the responsible for each and every operation before we introduced Redux. But after Redux introduction, what we said, we said this is becoming logic heavy component. This is becoming a chaotic component. So rather than performing operation over here, we can transfer the logic somewhere else that is known as store. Now, if I show you one, you can say image or one GIF that will make things clear for you. Let me just give it for you. I'll just show you one image. Let me show. I'll just show you one diagram that is a Redux ka flow diagram. Okay. And you look at this particular flow very carefully and things will be clear to you. Look at the flow very carefully. Look 1, 2, 3 times at this particular flow, and you will be able to see that what actually I was discussing was the same thing that Redux workshop on. Check it. Your UI is triggering an event. And this event, rather than being handled by the event handler, it has been transferred to the reducer in the store, and it is passing the output state to the UI. Making sense to you? कि again, everything will be triggered from the UI itself. We are clicking deposit $10. Rather than event handler handling the performance, it will be transferred to the store, and store will be performing all the operation, and I will be passed a copy of the output. Okay. Now, how to work with this Redux? Is if you are comfortable with context API, there will be no point of, let's say, complexity into it. But as an experienced guy with Redux who have been working with Redux for so long, let me just give you a, let's suppose, disclaimer. Redux is simple, but it is configuration wise little bit complex for the people who is dealing with the Redux for the first time. They might get confused while setting up this Redux or while configuring this Redux. We have to do store, we have to do slicer, main.jsx, provider, store. Tons of confusing term will come into configuration, and you might get let's confused. But try not to get confused. I'll just go. I will follow official documentation for this. I'll go with Redux. Come to this. Come to tutorials. I'll go to quick start. This is the thing that we are going to follow. I will also provide the GitHub repository for that. Now, let's suppose we are having an application. Let's suppose I'm having an application right with me. And in this application, we are going to configure the Redux application. Then we are going to see that how configuration can be done. So I'm going to first show you how to configure Redux. Then we'll be moving to build a small application that's supposed to do a counter to just get a feel ki how this works in real time. Now, just for introduction's sake, open your terminal. Okay, go to cd state the application. Okay, now what I'll do, I'll come to this Redux application. I'll copy this command, come back to this, and install this command. Simple. Package added. Now, after that, what I'll do, I'll just go onto documentation again. I'll follow. They are saying ki create a Redux store first. Then, so what I can do, I can go on this particular file. In source, I can create a Redux implementation. Just say I'll say Redux. Simple. I'll say Redux. I'll create two files over here. Let's suppose first file I'll be creating, that is known as store.js. Simple. Store.js I have created. And in this particular thing, what I want, I don't be doing anything unusual for you. I'll just copy this particular thing from here, and I'll do this. Simple. Because syntax might change on weekly, monthly basis, but you don't have to worry about each and everything will be coming in documentation, so you don't have to go here and there. And you can export this store. Simple. What I have done, I have exported this store right from here. What actually it is doing, we are utilizing a configure store method that is coming from Redux toolkit. Okay, and we are creating a store by configuring the store, and we are also making a reducer object that is empty right now. That means we are not writing any function for now. We are not writing any logic for now. Now, after that, what it is saying, it is going to be say that we need to provide the access of the store. It is saying provide the Redux store to the React. So for that, I will be copying this particular thing from here, come back to the next step, go on to the main file. Where's the main file? This is the main.jsx. I'll be coming to this, and I will be using this store. And I don't want to use this app.store. I'll just use Redux store.js. Simple. Now, what they are doing simple. They are wrapping your main.jsx. Look, they are mapping your JS into this application simple. So what I'll be doing, I'll be creating, I'll be copying this, I'll be creating provider, I'll paste this, and I'll take value store is equal to store. Simple, nothing else. What I have done, I have just provided the Redux to my application. Again, listen carefully. I have not done anything special, just imported a store where we have created the store. We have also imported a provider that is was coming from React Redux by default, and we have provided the application the access of the store. So my application can utilize the store value. After that, they are saying you need to create the Redux state slice. That means if you want to create slice, you have to go with just like this. Let's suppose what I'm doing, I'll copy the first import, come to this, let's create a file named as slice. So let's suppose I'm going to make a to-do application. Let's suppose we are making a to-do application, and I'll just create one file that is to-do slice.js. Simple. And I'll import this create slice method over here, and I will be using to-do slice. Let's suppose export const to-do slice is equal to create slice. It is a method, it will receive an object into it. Now what they are doing, what you have to do, you need to define certain thing, and that's where your structure get complex. Again, just for a recap purpose, if you have not following along, just do remember I have installed the React Redux, created the store, provided the access of the store to my application that is main.jsx. Now I am creating a slicer that is called reducers. Now how to create, you can say a slice is simple. You have to create the name of the slice. I'll say name is that suppose to do's. Simple. It's going to be a to do slice. So what we are going to contain, we are going to contain to do's. Now after that, we are going to have an initial state of the application. Now suppose initially there is no to do involved, so I'll keep my initial state as a empty array, and later on whenever somebody will be creating any task, I will be pushing thing into that state. Now after that, what I can have, I can write my function that is called reducer, and I will be writing a function over here. Now whenever you are writing function, let me discuss one thing. If we are having a task, let's suppose we are going to write a to do. Let's suppose I'm writing to do take a YouTube session. Okay. And after this first task, I'm also writing second task, that's a take the YouTube session. That means both tasks are identical. So if you want to perform certain operations, they will be performed on both identical, you can say, task, because they are the same task. So how to differentiate the task, how to differentiate this task? You will differentiate the task using a ID, that is a unique ID. So to provide unique ID, there are certain method to it, right? And one of the methods date.now, we can use date.now, that we use in Zustand, the date.now. But in Redux, we are having a by default method that is known as nano ID. By default, a nano ID will be given in the you can say Redux or Toolkit. So you can utilize this nano ID to make a unique identification. Now, if I want to say, I want to create one function, I will write one function, that is, I want to write a add to do function. So what are the some function that is available in the to do list? First one is add to do, remove to do, update to do, or delete all to do. Let's suppose I'm going to write one function that is called add to do, and remaining you can try at home. That's just for the me purpose I'm writing. Let's suppose I'm writing a function name that is add to do. Simple. What add to do will do? It will be writing a function. Simple. Okay, they will have a simple function, and it will take certain things from me. What it will take from me? Let's suppose it is taking the current state. Okay, what is the current state of my application right now? And what are the action that I need to perform. And what is actually action into this scenario? Let me just give you the idea. If you look at the flow diagram very carefully, every time we are dispatching something, we are creating an action. That's what action is. So this particular function will receive a state and the action. And what does this action will contain? Action will have to the moment it will say, I have to create a new to do. What I'll do? I'll say const to do equal to, let's create a new to do. And in new to do, what we can have a nano id. I'm just creating it just for the reference. Yeah, I'm going to have a nano id, or let's directly create without any new keyword. Let's create a to do, a simple object just for it, a const to do. I'm creating a to do. To do is going to be having a certain id. How will I create id? Nano id. By utilizing a nano id, I will be able to use I will be able to generate a random id. Now after that id, what I want to receive? I want to receive the task that I want to enter. That means from where the task will be received. Task will be received from the payload. So I'll take the, let's suppose to do, or let's suppose text is going to be the action dot payload dot text. Simple. Okay, I will be receiving this particular text in the action method. Now after that action has been completed, I can also mark my task by default incompleted. Let's suppose, so I'll say using completed false. After that task is completed, what I can do, I can push this particular to do into the state. That means initial state is going to be the empty. Now I'll create a to do. Every time a to do will be hit, and I'll create that particular to do, and I'll, after creating it, I will pushing that to do into that particular array. That means I will create a new object every time, and I will be pushing that particular new object into that array. So after sometimes it will become like a key. Let's suppose it will become a key. It is a arrays of object. Now after that part is done, you need to export those, you can say function. How will you export this function? It is already suggesting, but if you want to see key how they are going to export it, just have to go to quick restart, going to like this, and this is the thing that they are going to use. Simple copy here, come back to this. This is not counter slice, it is a to do slice, and we are going to have add to do, and remaining of the task is not going to be there. I'll remove remaining of the task, and it is going to be the to do slice. Simple. Now just try to check whatever we have done so far, is it making sense to the applications? What I'll do, I'll just hit npm run dev. In 5173, I'll just click on 5173 and I'll go inspect. It is saying the store does not have a valid reducer. Why it is saying store does not have a valid reducer? Because I might forget. Let's check. What I have forgotten in store.js, my reducer is empty currently, right? But I have created this slice over here. So first I need to import it. How will I import it? Come to store.js and I'll say import to do slice. Import to do slice from to do slice. And to do slice is export default, so I'll not be using this. To do slice.js. Because sometimes you have to import with the full extension. And here I'll be going to use a reducer. I'll be going to use to do, and I'll be passing the to do slice over it. To do, just name to do and to do slice. I'll come to the application right away just to check whether everything is okay or not. I'll refresh this application and the error is not there. That means I can understand that this part is done. So this is just for the configuration part. This was just for the configuration part. So just to check this application is fine and up and running, You can introduce, you can install a Redux dev tool. You can click over this dev tool and you will be able to see this particular to do is currently empty. That means this particular state is empty. Because why it is empty? Because in my application I have defined the initial state of the to do is going to be empty. Simple. Key, what I have defined, key initial state of this to do is going to be empty. That's why in the application you are seeing the initial state is being depicted, or you can say defined as a empty array. Now tell me, till this part the configuration part is over. Are you comfortable till this part? Let me check the comment section as well. Comfortable till this part? Okay. Now, what I have to do is, let me just use this. What I have to do is, I will do a UI setup as well for you, okay? Because we are configuration wise, we are good to do. Now, if somebody want to have a UI, let's suppose I'm creating a two components from here. Let me create a component folder. In components folder, I'll create two folder. First one is going to be the add to do .jsx, and I'll create one more file just for show to do.jsx. First component is going to add to do for me, and the second component is going to show to do for me. Just means I will be able to utilize use dispatcher as well and use selector as well. Now, in this particular thing, come to add to do.jsx, use RAFC, a simple React component I'm going to use. Now, in this particular to do, I'm going to have one input, just one input. I'll use input. In input, I'll use a type. Type is going to be text, and I'll use placeholder enter any task. Simple. I'm not doing anything extra. I'm just taking an input with input type text. After that, this task is done. Now I will take a button. Button will have a simple button attribute, and button name is add to do. Simple. Let's suppose button name is add to do, and I will have a on click defined on this button. I will say handle click. Simple. If this is a handle click, if then somebody will click over this button, I will handle this particular click. Now, whenever somebody will change any input, when somebody will type, I'll use on change, I'll use handle change. That means they are the two function that I want to work with. First one is going to be the handle change. Second one is going to be the handle click. When somebody will type something, I'll use handle change. When somebody will click over the button, I'll change. Now, for the input, I need to have a state. Let's suppose we are having a state const input comma set input, or initially let's suppose use state is going to be empty string. Simple. Just take an empty string. Till then, let me check. Is everything okay? Am I audible properly? Tell me. Am I audible properly? Okay. Now, what actually I was saying, just create this particular method. Now, I have taken a state as well. Now, I will be utilizing few things that you need to remember. Just do not gulp it, just try to make it a reflex. You will be remembering. You will be trying it multiple times, then it will become a habit for you. Now, let's suppose I'm going to write one function for me. Let's suppose handle click. I'll write const handle click. What this function was actually doing for me? What this function was actually doing for me? Nothing. It was performing some logic of summation right over here. I can write some logic over here. But rather than writing logic over here, what I'll be choosing, I will be trying to send this logic to my to-do slice. This is a logic that I have written. I want from whenever somebody will click over it, I will make an action of it and I will send that particular action to this add to-do slice. Simple. That means I need to import this. So I'll use import. I'll use import. What was the method? Add to do. Add to do was the function. So I'll import this add to do.js. I will also import use dispatcher, use dispatch, and I'll start the use dispatch as well. Const dispatch is equal to use dispatch. The hook I have initialized. Okay. Now when somebody will target this particular button, or let's suppose somebody will be targeting on change as well. Let's write on change it. Handle change is equal to event is going to be fired. Now what I'll do, I'll take this set input button and I will enter event dot target dot value. Let's suppose when I'm somebody will be clicking over it, I will handle event dot target dot value. Now what about this input? I'll take this input, I'll show as a default value. Simple. Let's suppose I'm doing this. Is not mandatory to have, but it's good to have. Now when somebody will click over the submit button, what I want to first check whether this input that is coming is empty string or not. So you can define a simple logic. If somebody is sending you something, let's suppose you are, if the input text that is coming, let's suppose the input, I'll trim that input for negative space if that is equal to empty string. So I will return it over here from directly, if I just return it, I don't need to run any operation because I can also fire a alert कि भाई please enter something. कि भाई पहले value तो डालो input की और to do की, then I will be able to perform operation. Otherwise, what I'll do, I'll call the dispatch button and I will call which function? I'll call add to do function. Simple. Add to do, and I will pass the add to do one thing that is called text input. I will invoke this function and I will pass one entity that is known as text. Let's suppose I'm passing an object. Text is going to be input text. Simple. This is going to be the input. Whatever input I am providing from here, this I can provide an input. Simple. Now let's try. Till this part it is clear now? Tell me. Till this part it is clear? Okay. Now, if I want, I will check whether this component is working or not. So I'll pick this component from over here and I'll come back to this and I'll use this app and I'll use this add to do directly over here. Simple. And I'll come back to my operation. That is a simple thing. And nothing, there is no error for now. And for that sense, let me add one task. I'll just take a class. Simple. I'll just use this and I'll hit add to do. The moment I hit add to do, nothing will happen. Why? But on the Redux dev tool, I might be able to see one thing. Refresh it and click on Redux tool. Initially, the to do is empty, right? But the moment I add any task, let's suppose because I'll add any task, or I'll click on add to do, I'll click again on DevTools of Redux. I have certain object into it. What I have certain object to it. I'll click over this object and you will be able to see what I'm having. I'm having let me just make it a little bit bigger if possible. There is no point of if I can. Okay. Now, if I can click over it, look at this. What it is actually doing, it is creating you the ID. What is this ID? Where is this ID coming from? This ID is coming from nano ID that we are using in Redux Toolkit. And the second thing is called text. Text is coming from action.payload.text that we are sending from frontend. or initially the completed mark is false. That means again, if you come to this logic and you can check this to do slice, that means rather than doing rather than handling this particular logic in here, I am just sending this logic by creating an action from here. What I'm actually doing, I am action doing creation. I'm just creating an action and I'm dispatching that action to a function called add to do, and that function I have already defined into to do slice, that is known as time travel debugging. Now, after I complete this, my add to do is working. That means my store is getting the input. If I let's create add to do one more time, go over this, you will have one more to do. You'll have two to dos with different ID, but text is same. This is also because this is also because. So if you want to delete one to do, you will be checking. You can target using the ID. Look at the compare both IDs are different, right? But what if I want to create a component which is showing that to do task? That means I want to create a list over here. I want to show the task, or let's suppose I want to console the task. I will come to the second component, that is going to be the show to do. Here we are going to do one thing. Just give me one moment, then we will continue. Just give me one moment. Now, now in this show to do, what actually I want to do, I want to define, I want to create a component which can reflect the second hook. And the second hook that I want to create is use selector. I want to create a component that can get the access of the store and that can print me the to do's. How I can do it? Let's create a simple component, and in this component I'll use one hook, that is use selector. I'll import the hook. Let's suppose I'm going to use const to do's equal to use selector. I'll use the selector, and what I want the access of the state key, what actually the current state of the store. I'll take the state and I will be printing state dot to do's. Yeah, to do, simple. And click over this and use console.log to do's. Yeah, I'm creating a data variable. I am using a selector hook. I am targeting the state and I'm bringing out the state dot to do's from inside. Let's try to console it, and let's try to go on app.jsx and try to have a component show to do as well. Import this to do, come to this file, and let's have a state. Add this show to do. They are printing undefined. Why it is printing undefined? It is going to be state dot to do only, I believe. Rather than to do's, I'll say state dot to. That should be coming. Yes. Initially, as you can see, initial state is empty array. It is not going to be anything. But the moment you type something, let's suppose I'm typing because, the moment I hit add to do, you will see one value over the store. That means somehow I'm able to use the selector hook into the component and by using the selector hook I am able to perform this operation. Now if you can see, this is a id coming. I'll click over one more time, 2 3 4 5. Let's suppose I'm having a 5 to dos with this different id, same name. But if you want to show that to do into this, how I can show that particular to do? Is there any methodology that I want to follow? Again, it is suggesting that you can use map key. Whatever the to do is there, you can map the to do's with the id. So I'll be using their formula to, let's suppose, map this particular task. I'll come back to this. Look at this. When I use this, it is going to be let's suppose empty. The moment I type anything, let's suppose because, and not suppose because, I'll click on add to do. Look at this, because is being attached. If I click over one more time, 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, I can use this particular store to add the value and to select the value. But if I say I have one more component to do the same, so will I have to access the store? Will I have to create the store again? Let's try it. If I'm having one more component, let's suppose it is having view. Let's have view to do .jsx. I'll create this component. Okay, and I'll take this component from show to do to view to do as well. Three component is going to be there, and let's suppose I'm going to have same task const, let's suppose task is equal to use selector. I'll use this use selector hook, and I'll take the state access, and I'll take state dot to do. That's it, simple. And I'll print console.log task. And I can also utilize the same structure over here, and I will be able to print that task. Let's suppose simple. I can map those element with a special id, and I can pass key. I will pass with key as a id, element.id. I can pass, that is a list and key, simple. You can use li, you can use h1 h2, whatever you want. I'll come to that. Here are in the h1 component, again 2 times it is printing because there are two console and two component. If I take any task right here, click on add to do, h1 component is being not rendered because I have done something. Let's take this. I have to copy this from here, and I'll come back to view to do. Okay, it is going to be the task task.text. I'll take the each and every task. Simple. Come to this, just naming convention change. Look at 2 times they are printing, but first one is going to be show to do, second one is going to be the view to do. That means how many component is there does not matter. If you are having one component, two component, three component, five component, do I need to drill the props? Answer is no, I don't have to drill the props. Do I need to you can say use context API for that? Answer is no, you don't have to use context API. So how good this is? If somebody asks you how good this Redux is, very good. But if you want to use hooks over here, why we are using global state management library? It is good to have a global statement thing with you, that whenever your state become complex, you can use it. But the problem is it is bit heavy duty. It is performance overkill. If a certain kind of behavior or certain kind of you can say achievement in state management, you are utilizing too much of a technology just to achieve a small task, right? But for this particular thing, there is a one more solution to it. What is the solution is simple. Okay, let's suppose before we move to solution, let's write one more function in this Redux, so that you will be comfortable using this. I'll just write, let's suppose come to to do slash. Let's try to write one more function. Let's suppose remove all to do. And how to write remove all? Let's suppose I'm having remove all. How will you do this? I'll take this function simple. It will nothing, it will not do anything. Whatever the state was there, remove all means कि I have to delete all the to do's. So what actually I'm doing, whatever the initial state was of the component, I am returning this particular thing back to their original state. Yes or no? I'm not doing anything. The whatever the current state, whatever the initial state was of the component, I'm just returning back to this. So I'll just use return, let's suppose empty array. That's it. It is a little bit, you can say I'm using shortcuts. Okay, I can directly return. Otherwise, I can take a state, I can set state dot, you can say set or state dot remove or pop all the tasks. You can also do the same. But what will happen actually? Simple method is there. If whatever the initial state was there of the component, you have to return the component back to their original state. So I'm just using remove all. So if I create a remove all button where, let's suppose on show to do task, and I'm also utilizing one button. I can take a button over here. Button name is going to, let's suppose, delete all or remove all. Or let's in add to do itself, I can have a remove all button. Let's take a button after show to do, and I'll take one more button. Button name is remove all. I want to delete all the task. What I can do? Actually, I can call a function on click, not on play. On click, I will be using handle click, and I'll come to that and I'll use const handle click is equal to arrow function. What is arrow function? And what I'll do, I'll call one function simply. Which function I'll call? I'll say dispatch. For dispatch, let me just create a dispatch right over here. Const dispatch is equal to use dispatch, and I'll use the use dispatch, and I'll call which function I'll call remove all function. I'll invoke this function. But you can see the removal is not defined because in to-do slice I have not exported this function right over here. I'll be using remove all, simple. And in show to do I need to import that remove all right over here. I'll use import remove all. Now come back to my UI and let's try to test this theory. Let's add one task. Okay, and I want to delete these tasks, not all, because these are coming from view to do. Let's try to remove this view to do first, so I will have a simple explanation that what we are trying to do over here. Okay, I'm just having show to do just for the reflection purpose. Okay, the moment I'll click over this, what will happen actually? What's supposed to happen? That it should delete, it should set the particular value to its original position. So when I'll click this remove all, it will set the original state back to the empty array. Let's try this again. When I remove this, look at this. In console.log, when I add, let's suppose there are 3, 4, 5 tasks there. But the moment I'll click over the remove all, it will invoke one function that is called remove all to do. And by utilizing this function, I will be able to remove, or I will be able to set the state back to the original one. That is the initial state, or initial state means it is going to be the empty array again, right? Now, if you talk about key, is there any alternative to it? Key, if I say, key, sir, this is going to too much. This is too much for a state management approach. Configuration करो, reducer लिखो, उसके बाद slicer में जाओ, provider provide करो, dev tools install करो, तमाम तरीके की चीजें. You will have to do multiple setup alongside with this application just to add this. It add dark background, where I have to add dark background. Okay, I'll use in the next session because in Chrome I don't know where to do. Now, if I say after that particular stuff, if I want to find alternative, because in human nature you have to find alternative, a better approach for this particular thing, because it might be a little bit hectic for a newbies or pivot level application to set up this much thing, because we have almost taken 1 hour to finish a small application. Because if I wanted, I could have gone too much fast, so you will not be able to understand whatever we are doing or I am actually writing. So what I did, actually I took an application, broken into a smaller pieces into the configuration as well, so you will be able to understand. Now, if you're willing to find an alternative to it, there is an alternative is just stand. How to utilize just stand is a bit simple than you can say Redux. It is also saying it is used, rather than having a slicer, it is going to use create method. So if you go on just stand, because I teach just stand to my student in trainings as well. If you go to just stand, it is a documentation of the just stand. Okay, it is the same thing as state management. If you click over one up, but what actually it is doing, if you want to create, look at this. If I copy this particular code, they are not doing anything, they are creating a store, but a store is a hook for them. So because hook are the lightweight structure, so whenever they are installing the just stand, they are utilizing a create method. What we are utilizing, we are using create slice, they are using only create, right? Only create method, they are defining a count as one, and we are defining a function increment which will set the state to state count plus one, nothing else. And there is a front end that they are writing, we can show the count. When we want to increase it, I will call increase function. When I want to decrease it, I will call the decrease function. So if I copy this particular code, if I try to go back to the just end, what I'll do, I'll just npm install just end, install just end. Let's suppose I'm creating a task, a file named as how we can create just end dot jsx, simple. And what I'll do, I'll use RAFCE, simple component just end. Let's suppose I'm importing create method from just end, simple create method from just end. Now what I want, I will be utilizing a function. Let's suppose I'm creating this ability, and I'm consoling the user store. What actually I'm doing, I'm creating a user store hook. I'm using a hook that is having a user store as name. I'm using a create slice method. Compare it with only Redux. In Redux, we are having a create slice, but in Justin, we are having a create method. And in create method, they are also taking a state, right? And in this state, I am initializing the count as 0, and I am defining a function. And look at this to do slice. The name, to do's, initial state empty, and then function. In the same, we are also using name, use state, initial state 0, and increment function. And I can have one more function, let's suppose decrement. So in decrement function, what I'll have count minus 1. That's it. If I want to have a reset button, I'll set count reset 0. I can return it. Now, if you want to have a front end over it, if you want to have a button that can increase, decrease the count, you will have to have a two buttons. They are having a two buttons. Look at this. H1 count, simple, three button, increment, decrement, and reset. If I want to go on app.jsx for you, I'll show one thing. Just comment it, and I will use a just stand as an approach. Just stand. I'll show the just stand. Hi Rohit, how are you? Doing good? Now let's come back to this application right over here and come to this state. Refresh this. Okay, server connecting, not connecting. I'll have to start npm run dev. Start this application. Initial state 0, increase it, decrease it, reset it. Simple. So if you want to understand that, is there any alternative to it? Yes, there is an alternative, and the name of the alternative is Justand. If you willing to understand what actually Redux is a global statement library, state management library, but there is an alternative that exists. There are alternatives that exist of Redux that is much lightweight, much easy to configure. Now look at this Justin. If you want to configure your store, you can configure that in somewhere else, just like a store you have configured, and you can call that particular function using state.increment, state.decrement, whatever you want to call it, right? Understood that how actually it is going to be implemented. Okay, this is how your state management actually works. Now question arises, ki what actually is required to be a good state management tool, what we can utilize. In the utilization purpose, never ever try to implement neither Redux nor your just stand or recoil. Nothing is required at pivot level. That means in the starting of your application building, you don't require anything. You just require a normal props or prop drilling or context API. But the moment your state become complex as your application grows, and you feel a necessity, now I will be requiring state management separately because multiple components are involving, that kind of scenario, if that exists, then you can utilize Redux or Justin. But I would say go with Justin, but try to remember, try to understand you need to understand Flux or singleton architecture or single source of truth first. If you're comfortable with single source of truth and how actually monotonous or single way binding works, then you can utilize either Justin or Redux. But comfortably, because I have worked with both on the software level, so I understand that Justin might be a little bit easier for you in comparison to Justin or Redux in order to configure it. If you compare it side by side, both are similar. Both are derived from a singular concept, that is a singleton architecture. But configuration wise or opinionation wise or opinionation, according to my rule, Justin is much lighter as compared to Redux. So whenever you are good at state management, somebody wants to say they are good at state management, they have to be good at context API, prop drilling, Redux, Justin, or there's one more term that is called recoil. Why I have not discussed recoil? Because there's a reason behind it. Because recoil is not being used because it was a Facebook funded, you can say, library for state management. They are not, you can say, going ahead with it. They have stopped funding and maintaining the recoil. But recoil was much more efficient in terms of management because it was managing your state on the atomic basis, the smallest unit. That is a, you can say, atomic entity on the state. So I hope this thing makes you can say sense to you. कि whenever a state comes into picture, you cannot directly jump onto a conclusion. कि I will only use Redux, I will only use Just, and I will only go with context API. No, you need to understand one thing first. कि what are the requirement of my application? If my requirement are Redux, I will go with Redux. If my requirement are not Redux, so does not, isn't it is not a compliance, is it not a compulsory that you know Redux so you have to implement Redux? Nothing like that. If you don't know Redux, you can make the context API in use and you can solve the same problem by a context API as well. Okay, and again for the question purpose, people were asking me key placement season is also going on. So regarding that, I will show you one thing, that we are coming up with one, you can say, training program, that is a placement 360. And what actually placement 360 is, it's according to, let's suppose, 360 rule. Whenever you are sitting in a placement, right, placement require, you can say, all round practice. It will be requiring DSA, it will be requiring system design, it will be requiring computer fundamental, you can say programming, SQL, computer networks, aptitude. So we have curated, you can say self-paced program for you guys, for a student, and the one who is looking for switch. So in this particular thing, you will be able to master your programming language, either of the one Java, C++, or Python, or JavaScript, any language you can pick. And you can do DSA with Sandeep sir, right? You will be able to understand low level design as well. Then sequential, you can get SQL as well. Your core subject like DBMS, computer fundamentals, computer networks, architectural design. Then your aptitude as well, right? Then you can practice, you can they will be having a projects as well in that particular thing. So you can go and check out this particular training program, right? And you will be also getting the AI tools that I'm going to teach, and I have also taught a batch one. You will be also getting the access of that as well, and you can meet your mentor. The Sandeep sir is going to be there in your self-paced video. They have recorded it, and it's a fantastic things to work with, right? So I hope it is clear that I will be placed. You can check out the description for it, and I will also paste the link over here. Let me just paste the link. Okay, you will be able to understand. Now, if you are not having any doubt, if you're having any doubt, you can ask. Otherwise, we can wrap up the session. No doubt. Okay. So, in the Monday's live session that we are going to conduct, I'm going to understand, give you the understanding about architecture. That what is actually performance included, where the performance come into picture in React, and how do we improvise performance. There are some technology, code splitting, module federation, shell app. We are going to discuss few of the system design concept related to front end part, that is obviously React, and some of the micro front end concept as well. So give you the understanding of that how front end is going to be optimized, and how it is going to be performance wise enhancement can be there by using system design or micro front end architecture. Okay, so till then, take care, and I will see you in the next live that is on Monday at the same time. So thank you guys for joining, and bye bye.